All right, we're going to get started here. Thanks for everybody to join here. I'm going to do this presentation on cash buys. It's a pretty slick program that APM has. And if you haven't met me yet, my name is Drew Messner. Can you see the next slide here? Yeah, there's a little delay. So I've been in the mortgage industry for 17 plus years. And in the real estate industry, I graduated with a finance degree from St. Cloud State University. Purchasing a home, as we know, can be a stressful process. And I understand that it's the largest purchase somebody might make. So I strive to make it a fun and exciting process. I'm also very passionate about technology and all the tools that APM has. So I like to implement that into this process. I live in Carver, Minnesota, and I have a wife, Erin. We got married in 2013. I have a 6-year-old daughter in 2 weeks, and now a 3-month-old son. Outside of work, I enjoy spending time with my family. Sports, I was a big basketball player, golfing, and just being on the lake. So here, our agenda today is going to be, again, like I said, talking about cash buys. Pretty crazy that we can implement that with the mortgage industry. So I'm going to go over that. What is cash buys, our program details, and the process for your buyer. Even going over an offer strategy and some questions. So what is cash buys? It is a unique program to help your buyer stand out in a competitive market. We all know how crazy last spring was. I'm hoping that we're not going to have to deal with that again this spring, but it's already looking like we will. Hopefully it's not as bad if it is, but we'll get through it. So what that is going to help you do is get more offers accepted in a competitive cash environment with no contingencies, only the home inspection. Here's how it works. Your client secures a fully underwritten and approval through American Pacific Mortgage, our company, who is your preferred lender, by the way, of Bridges, if you didn't know that. But before you make an offer, you're going to notify us that you wish to use this cash buys option, and we'll issue you your certificate to include in your offer. We're going to submit the offer, waiving the financing and appraisal contingencies. We'll work quickly to secure the financing before the close date. If the financing isn't ready, cash buys is ready to go, and the property will be purchased by them and resold to your client at the same price or terms. I believe we're going to offer that up to 6 months. So here's a little bit on the program details. It's for conventional loans up to high balance limits, primary residence and second homes, single family, townhomes, and condos that are warrantable. You know, sometimes we run into a non-warrantable condo due to many reasons. So unfortunately, that won't work. But we have a minimum credit score of 660. Believe it or not, when we were thinking about rolling this out last year, we're going to maybe do 700, but we were able to get that down to 660. And down payments as low as 5%. I just did a little sneak peek video here. Let's see if this works. Probably going to pull up in a different screen, of course. Yep. Can you see that now, guys?
Yes.
Thank you, Jim.
When you're purchasing a home, competing with cash buyers can be tough. Have you made an offer only to get beat out by someone paying cash? Imagine competing and winning the bid by becoming a cash buyer yourself. American Pacific Mortgage is pleased to present our Cash Buys program, giving you the ability to present a competitive cash offer, waive contingencies, all backed with the assurance that you've got the money secured. Here's how it works. First, secure your fully underwritten and approved loan through APM. Next, start shopping for a home. Once you've found your home, but before you make an offer, notify us that you wish to use the cash buys option, and we'll issue a certificate to include in your offer. You and your agent submit the offer, waiving financing and appraisal contingencies. When your offer is accepted, we'll work to secure your financing before the close date If the financing isn't ready, Cash Buys is ready to go and the property will be purchased, then resold to you at the same price. Just because you make a cash offer doesn't mean you have to pay cash. Cash Buys provide security and peace of mind as we work diligently to get your financing closed. We'll put up the cash if you need it. Sound too good to be true? It's not. At American Pacific Mortgage, we provide solutions for today's home buyer. At APM, we bring people home.
Okay, hopefully that wasn't too loud or not loud enough.
I was in equipment sales. I was a real estate investor.
We're going over program details. Here we go. Process for your buyer. So basically, it's a couple steps here. Borrower gets TBD pre-approved from the loan officer. One of us APM loan officers. So what TBD, in case you didn't know, stands for to be determined. We find a property of interest. We send the property address to us, the loan officer, along with the desired offer price. Your loan officer will work with a power buyer team. That is who we partnered with, basically our investor, to provide the dollar amount that they are willing to pay in cash. You'll receive a power buyer approval letter allowing the buyer to waive appraisal and financing without any risk to the consumer. If the offer is accepted, we're going to do our darndest to secure financing with APM as we would anyway. Evaluation or cash backing determination is the power buyer team runs 5 different artificial intelligent appraisal valuations and then reviews recent sales to determine the value for the property. Buyer power team then runs an evaluation of the lowest the home could appraise and still allow the borrower to qualify. This then gets paired with an evaluation above. The cash backing allows then to turn their traditional financing into a cash offer. Process for your buyer. The risk to the consumer. Your loan officer and the buyer team are very diligent and only approve deals where the consumer has the ability to 100% qualify for a loan. This part's pretty neat. So to date, 99% of the clients who have gone under contract with this power buyer offer have ended up closing on the agreed upon date and are only paying a 1% fee to utilize this cash program. So here's kind of how it works from example of the fee structure. So to utilize this cash buys deal, its initial reserve requirement or deposit of 3%. If Power Buyer LLC purchases the home, that's that 1% scenario that probably will never happen. The reserves will be retained and the home will be sold back to the buyer as soon as possible, within that 6 months to where they could, get financing. If the initial financing is secured with a lender other than APM, they're going to lose 2% of that. So the goal is if we do all the work, we partner with our investor, we'd ultimately like to get the financing. In that case, they're only going to lose 1% of this earnest money. So it's going to cost 1% to utilize this program. The power buyer team purchases the home and the buyer does not buy the home back. They're going to lose out the full 3%. So just kind of recap in my mind, because this is a little tricky understanding. Basically, it costs 3% to utilize this program. Worst case scenario where we write an offer for the buyer and something crazy happens to where they can't actually purchase the loan, the house with financing, then Cash Buys or Power Buyer, our LLC, the people we partner with, our investor will own the home and take their 3%. If they get under contract and actually go with a different lender, they're going to lose 2%. But ultimately, our goal is to get them approved with regular financing when they buy the house, and they're only going to lose that 1%, which is the cost of utilizing being able to offer on a home with cash. So here's some of the offer strategy. Determine offer price you would be comfortable offering with traditional financing. Then decrease your cash buys offer by 1%. So what we're finding is actually using this, your buyer is going to be able to get a lower sales price on this house. So here's an example. The property would be listed at $500,000. To be competitive in this market where things are going over ask price, you would traditionally submit an offer for $525,000 with a finance offer. However, using this cash buys deal, if we offer 1% lower than that, it'd only be about $519,750. Again, as a seller, will generally look at a guaranteed closing at $519,750 instead of a traditional financing offer of $525 with the contingencies. The listing agent info: when there is an all cash offer from our buyer, they can still back out. The benefit of cash buys, which is actually better than a traditional buyer that's not using this program but it's going to pay cash, is they can still back out. Here, the listing agent or the seller is guaranteed to get paid regardless. So financing, this offer letter is a cash guarantee, but at the same time, the borrower will likely get to financing. If they're unable to, the purchase contract will be assigned to Power Buyer Services LLC, our investor, and we will use the cash buys option to close at the stated date at the exact same terms. Cash buys: with the cash buys offer, the seller or listing agent will be guaranteed to get the offer price, regardless of whether the buyer is financing or Power Buyer Services LLC. So offer strategy: submit the property of interest to your loan officer. Your loan officer and Power Buyer team will determine the amount they will approve the cash backing, and then submit the offer for the buyer with the following adjustments. Like I said, we can waive the appraisal contingency, the financing contingency. A home inspection is still required, and there's an assignment clause. So this would be in your notes of the purchase contract. In the addendum section, where you might state things like waiving contingencies or an escalation clause, you would add the assignment clause that states the parties authorized buyer to assign the agreement to purchase the premises to own up buyer or Power Buyer Services LLC in the event the buyer is unable to close and no longer qualifies for the loan, pursuant to the exact same terms hereunder. Here's an example of how our Power Buyer approval letter looks. I know it's kind of hard to see. Can't really zoom in. It was hard to get it in this. But we can email that too if you want to look at what it looks like. Here's some frequently asked questions. So overview: why are cash buys offers better? As we kind of discussed, but we'll recap. Traditional cash offers do not contain a financing contingency and typically can close faster, so they are appealing for the sellers. However, many cash deals also still fall apart last minute. Basically, the buyer who's paying cash could just back out and the deal's done. Cash buys offers, on the other hand, are even stronger than traditional cash offers because if the contingencies are waived and the guarantee a seller that the property will close at the agreed upon terms with the buyer or our investor in the event the client ends up backing out. How is this different from just waiving appraisal and financing with the traditional offer? The cash buys approval provides a proof of funds to show the money is there to buy the property to be more attractive to the seller. For a buyer, you are also only ever risking your cash buys deposit of that 3% and not your earnest money. Does a cash offer still overpower a cash buys offer? Not necessarily. In a cash offer, a borrower can still back out of a deal and let the deal die and forfeit their earnest money. With a Power Buyer offer, a seller will be guaranteed the offer price regardless if it's coming from the original buyer or assigned over to Power Buyer Services LLC. Our business is still built on guaranteed closings. Some questions about the approval process. How quickly can a TBD approved borrower become eligible for a power buyer backing on a property? The power buyer team commits to a 1 hour turn time on all inquiries to ensure buyers and their agents are quickly to strengthen and submit their offers and remitted during business hours. On the weekends, it's a 2 to 3 time is what they're working on. How will the seller know the cash funds are verified if my client is obtaining the mortgage? Your APM loan officer will apply or provide an approval letter with details of the backing as well as the proof of funds. What is the minimum earnest money required for the buyer? The minimum earnest money is 3% based on the purchase price or higher if determined by the real estate agent and buyer. Our program only requires 3%. Now, this is a little tricky, but it's a presentation that's been created for us. You could literally have a $1,000 earnest money and still make it work. It's just the 3% deposit for the cash buys program. Submitting an offer. What if a customer wants to submit an offer above the amount of the power buyer team? We'll back in cash. This is a good scenario. The power buy team will usually have the customer deposit into an escrow, part of the difference. And assuming the customer purchases the home, they'll be able to utilize those funds as closing for down payment. If the buyer elects to use a partner title provider, the deposit can be used toward the amount required at closing. How quickly can we close on the cash buys program? The closing date is determined with the support of the lender. The cash buys program does not have a required minimum closing time frame, but wants to ensure everyone has a smooth transaction. Still on submitting an offer, does the buyer get the earnest money back in the event that the power buyer team buys the home? Now, as I was explaining in the fee section, basically the most they can lose out is the 3% cost of utilizing power buyer team to buy the property. How does the power buyer team facilitate closing in the event they need to buy the house? The buyer assigns the contract over to Power Buyer Services LLC, and power buyer team will have a homeowner's insurance and title insurance ready to go. More on submitting an offer. Does a customer need to use the suggested title company from Power Buyer Services LLC? No, but it's significantly easier to use our suggested title company because they work with APM and the customer's power buyer deposit and the earnest money deposit are all held at the same place. If the buyer elects to use our partner title provider, the client can use the excess deposit towards the down payment / closing costs required of the closing date. If a home is purchased by a power buyer, can my buyer move into the property? Yes, they will be required to pay a per diem, almost like a rent to own situation, in any days they occupy the property before obtaining the permanent financing. The cash buys program is powered by Power Buyer LLC. As you can see, the tongue twister that I can never say it on demand. I should have just been saying investor the whole time, but there is a website of this that we can share with you if you request. Here's our team of APM. If you haven't met any of us, we got our branch manager, Jim Kubavec, Don Bakula, myself, Will Holine, Enrico Esparza, and here's our phone numbers and our NMLS ID numbers. And here's would be a good time if you want to ask any questions. See, everybody's muted, so you can either ask by unmuting yourself or type it in the chat. Good question, Fred. It is not just for primary residences. Let me go back to that slide. Primary residences and second homes. So a second home would be different than an investment property. Second home would be like a vacation, up on a lake or down in Florida or something like that, but not for investment properties where you're buying it to rent or flip. Any other questions? Jim or Don, would you like to say anything?
I think you covered it really well, Drew. I don't have anything.
Okay, thanks, Don.
Looks like you have one more question, Drew.
Yeah. Can the property be renovated prior to the final finance closing? Well, that's a tricky question because, if we're gonna be doing the financing up front before cash buys actually buys the property, then that would have to be almost like a renovation loan. I can check on our investor rep to see if cash buys ends up buying the property, then the borrower could renovate it prior to. My guess is no, because if we're utilizing the cash buys, our investor, our buyer, that would be in the instance where we couldn't close on a traditional loan. So it's a last resort option. Good question, though. Any other ones, Fred? Hi, Paul. I think I just admitted you and didn't see that you were in the waiting room. So reach out to me, or I can send this recording once it becomes available. Fred was asking about more favorable LTV terms. Okay. Is that still along the lines of your renovation? Yeah. Okay. It's not that flexible of a program, unfortunately.
But it is going to give a lot of people opportunities if we get into several multiple offer situations, to really be able to make a cash offer versus a traditional standard. That's really what this is going to be combating, is being able to get your offer accepted.
Exactly. Yeah. The whole purpose of it is to allow us to have a buyer that needs financing and doesn't have cash sitting in the bank to buy a property, to be able to compete with the cash offers. And like I discussed, they might be able to get a better deal than using, regular traditional financing, or competing with the cash buyers, or an actual cash buyer, because if the buyer ends up backing out for any reason, our investor will still buy the property from the seller from the same terms. All right, are there any other questions? Yes, Fred. I also want to take a minute here to invite you all to our happy hour. If you are interested and haven't heard about that, email Jim Kulbeck, your RSVP, or any of us. That's going to be from 5:30 to 7:30 tonight at Lucky 13's in Plymouth. So I'd like to see you guys there if that works. Okay, awesome, guys. I don't see any other questions. Thanks for taking the time to learn about our cash buys program. Please reach out to us if you have any other questions. All right, thank you, guys.